I've had my P1P now for a couple of months. I don't know, somewhere in there, 6 to 8 weeks, and I finally got the P1P to the P1S upgrade kit. Now I waited quite a while before I ordered it, so I was like on the third batch or so, it took a little while to get here, but that was my fault. I should have ordered it right away. And it came in 2 shipments, the main box, and apparently there was some hardware missing, but it showed up the very next day, you know, so it had already shipped before I ever got anything in the, you know, through UPS, which is great. Now the box came in unscathed, but when I opened it up, you can see everything was just kind of thrown in here. You'd think it'd be kind of some extra padding or packing peanuts or something, because it came in, the box was upside down. When I put it right side up, you can hear everything, you know, just banging around inside. But that's how it came in, and there's the following shipment. I think it's some screws and something else. I just have to wait and see once I start taking, you know, when I start, hopefully there's no broken glass. I know the door and the top are glass, but hopefully nothing's broken. And now I probably won't go through the entire installation. If I do, some of the parts will be fast forwarded because I don't know if I can add anything more to the installation instructions. That Bambu has a pretty good setup on the Bambu Lab Wiki, and they have a video on it. I have not watched it yet. I'll probably watch it, you know, before I start putting it together. But if I have anything I can add to it, I will. But in the meantime, well, let's get started. So one of the first things you got to do while you're unboxing everything, there's a file you need to print. It's the air duct frame, I guess. The air duct for one of the fans. You can download it, you know, when you're on Bambu Lab Wiki. You can download it and at least get it started to print. I printed it on my X1 Carbon, and it probably took 2.5 hours, I guess, something like that. And I printed it with ASA and with support, and it came out okay. It looks like it was trying to warp on a piece, but it looks like it came okay. Came out okay. It was just at the very top of the support and where the part starts, it seemed like it was it's kind of rough. It didn't come out as nice as I would have liked, but everything else on it turned out pretty good. And it's ASA, so it should handle all the, you know, whatever heat we're gonna, you know, subject it to inside the printer. So be sure you know, pick a good filament, PETG or ASA or ABS, you know. But and before we get started, remember to check out our website. We have a growing number of products, services, and even some pretty cool t-shirts. So, well, let's get started. So I just immediately got started with the installation process, and the first thing was just you know, removing that control panel and that front plate, and there's just a few screws on that. But you'll notice, you know, as you follow along, I'm just following right along with the Bambu Lab Wiki page and referencing their the video that they have. So I'm just going step by step, and just to see how it would go, right? And after that first step, I was like, well, you know, instead of, you know, I'm just going to unwrap everything and check everything out. And while I was doing that, I was noticing, man, it's really packaged very well. Each little individual part is wrapped and boxed and then wrapped again, and then thrown into the bigger container. And nothing was damaged, luckily. There was no damage to especially the glass. The front glass and the top glass, there was no problem. I think on the back panel, there was a bend on one of the corners. It's the metal back panel, and but it was really easy to put it right back on. And you'll see here I'm putting on the front hinges, and it took me a while on that bottom hinge for the front door. You have to really work its way in there and angle it in, and then you can, secure it down. But it took me a long time to get that in for some reason. So just beware on that. So at this point I took off the back plate, and you'll see that it's much smaller. It's shorter than the upgrade back panel for the P1S, and that's somewhat important, and I'll explain later. But basically, when you're taking that back panel off, there are some screws that need to still come out before you put the larger panel in, and even the side skins on it, the left and the right. So when you take that off, there's actually some screws still left over that'll have to come out, but we'll see it later on. At this point, I'm just putting in the auxiliary fan, and it's pretty easy. Just lay it in place for now, and then snake your cable through there, and plug it in. And I have really fat fingers, so I had a hard time lining that up to plug it in. So luckily I had a set of real small needle nose pliers, and that did the trick. I was able to poke it in there and plug it in. So then comes the left panel already. So they want the left side done first, and the hardware came with it, and it's plastic. The left and the right panels are plastic, so but no big deal. They're still made very well. And when you put it in place, you can see where all the screws go, and you'll also see the screws on the rear that I was telling you about with that back panel. That you'll notice that the screws, you're going to have to remove some there. There, I'm pointing them out. And yeah, there was nothing said about that, but you'll see. Just put it in place. You'll see the screws that have to come out, and that'll be on both sides, the left and the right. And when you take these screws off, a lot of them you can actually reuse. I just put them in a pile, and because the proper hardware is included with each side, the left and the right side also. So whichever one you decide to use, just be aware you are going to be left over. You'll have some leftover hardware. Don't think you're missing anything. Just be aware you will have some extras. And I noticed when I was putting those in, I think the really small screws go along the top, and then you have two other screws. They're larger than the top ones, but you'll see the thread difference. The coarse thread is when you're screwing it into plastic, and then you have the machine screws that when you're going through metal. So just keep that in mind, and you probably won't get them mixed up. Just think of it that way, that the coarse ones are made for screwing into the plastic pieces. And try not to take the screws off and on and off again. Because the more you do it, do not torque them down too hard, because they are very small screws going into plastic, and they'll be fairly easy to strip. Right? So, and some of these screws too, when I'm going along the top, and then go down along the front and the back side, but especially the back side, it's really hard to see. So have some kind of flashlight or something ready so you can look down in there, and you'll be able to to see where the mounting holes are. Yeah, so now we're back to the auxiliary fan. Now that left panel is on, now that auxiliary fan is put on with both double-sided tape and a couple of screws, right? So I always like to test fit everything, especially before you put the double-sided tape in, so you can put it in place, and while you're putting it in, you can see, you know, what clearance you have. Because with the double-sided tape on there, it's pretty good tape. It's 3M tape, and it'll stick very easily. So make sure you get it in place and around that area before you press it in. And then there's a couple of screws to secure it down. I think the earlier models, they just used tape, and probably from heat or whatever factors, sometimes they fell off. So now they come with a couple of screws. And when you're pressing that fan against the plastic side, be sure you support that back side. You see my hand there? I just place something back there, and then you can sandwich it in. Don't just shove on it. But after that, it's all ready to go, and the auxiliary fan anyway. And yeah, you have a couple of screws on for the left and the right side that you'll have to screw down. So when it's all said and done, there's quite a few screws holding this thing together. It's really solid. You know, it's a piece of plastic, but with the number of screws holding that thing in, it's pretty solid. So this little fan, this is the for that main board. And you see I'm shining a light in there. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a slot that will slide in, and it's kind of hard. You have to slide it in, but then there's clearance between the frame, the rear frame, and that. So you have to look pretty close. And I had forgotten I had this headlamp, and it came in really, really handy. You know, that way, you know, wherever I'm looking, the light's right there, and I have both hands free. So I just have to keep messing with that little fan. It's a tight squeeze in there. So be prepared. And the same thing when you're plugging it in. I had to use my needle nose pliers. And that too, when I'm taking off, I had to take off the heat sink, and then I'm putting it back on after I put the fan in place. So when you're putting it on, put the heat sink back on, make sure you still have plenty of the thermal paste on it. And there was quite a few on there, quite a bit of it on there when I took it off. Just don't rub it off or anything like that. Just make sure there's plenty. And just plugging it in. And the right side the same way. Now the right side was really easy. You know, you don't have to worry about the fan or anything on the inside, not the auxiliary fan. You'll have to worry about the fan coming up next for the what is it, the enclosure fan, I guess. But the same thing with this right side. There's quite a few screws. Just use the proper ones. The coarse side, the coarse screws goes into the plastic, and then the fine thread machine screws are when they're going into metal. Yeah, it was pretty easy. And take note too, when you're looking at the bottom piece, you can see where the belt is. I'm kind of surprised it's not sealed, but no big deal. So you can see with the with the enclosure fan. So this is where I'm putting in that pre-printed part, and it went in pretty easy, but again, I do like to test fit everything before I screw it down. And when you pop the fan in, they're just locating holes really. So you screw down the frame and then you slide the fan in, and then just plug it in. And according to the instructions, I'm supposed to be putting in this back panel in, but let me stop you right here. So I would not put the back cover on at this point yet until you verify something, because if you have, you know, well, on the wiki instructions and everything, and if you even the video, if you follow along, you'll be putting that back panel back on. But if you have the P1P and it does not have the cable chain installed, then install it now, because the instructions they have for installing the cable chain is assuming that it's on a P1P. If you don't put the cable chain on there now, you're going to have to take this back panel back off to mount everything. Keep in mind, this instruction here they have, this is how to put the cable chain on the P1P. So you see the way this cover is much shorter than on the full size P1.6 or P1S. So yeah, so be sure when you first go through this whole process, you know, when you have the back of this off, when you're converting to the P1.6, put your cable chain and all that good stuff on before you put the back on. So in the video here, I went on my merry way and just started you know, finishing up the installation. You know, put that top plate on, put the control, put it back on, and the doors, they went on really nice. Everything's good and straight. So the only things that I did not see in their instructions, it was for the cable chain and this bracket. I'm going to take a look at that, and a heavy-duty tool head cable. So that was not mentioned at all, and I'll take a look and see what we have here. So this is where I figured out that, okay, I'm going to have to take the back cover off again, and then go through this step of putting the cable chain on and all that good stuff. And I just fast forwarded it through this because their instructions are pretty good. It's just a matter of when you do it, right? So I just fast forwarded through that. Well, there she blows. Everything turned out pretty good. I was just having to take that back cover off and on so many times. That was kind of aggravating. And I'm going to find something to line that top with, so the glass will have something to sit on. And this cable, they looked almost identical. I was trying to see even if there was a change in the gauge of the wires or something, but I could not tell. So, but it's got the new one on anyway. So let's fire it up. So now that it's all done, you can see going through the steps. Let's scroll on down. We'll come back to this in a second. We'll look at the G code, but for now I just want to go and verify the functionality. So here at the bottom, it's pretty easy. You just turn on the computer, turn on the printer, and you confirm that the screen is displayed normally. Okay, just make sure it powers up, and then we jump over to the auxiliary cooling fan and make sure you can turn it on and off, and then run through the calibration. After that, we will go back and take a look at the G code here. Alright, so everything is plugged in. Everything is set and ready to go. So let me reach back here and turn this thing on. Hopefully it doesn't fry. Alright. Well, that looks okay. Now let me find the fan control. Yeah, so far it's feeding through everything. Let's see. There's the fan. Auxiliary. Yeah, you can hear it. Boy, that sucker's loud, isn't it? And I'll have to take a look at that, so I'm just wondering, is that just on full speed all the time, or surely... There's the chamber fan, and that's full blast again. Now it's off. And there's the part. Yeah, so all the fans are working. Alright, well that's good. Well, let's run it through a calibration. And yes. Okay, so I'll let that do its thing, and then we'll come back and look at the G code. So now let's look at Studio, and we need to set up this P1S. And don't forget to do this. So we go over here to the settings, and because right now it's still set up for a P1P, let's go to the P1S, and we'll take that one away. There we go. And now we need to set the G code. So you click here, and here's all your printer settings, and here's the G code, and you can see the similarities here. If you look at the Bambu Lab Wiki, and it'll show the M710 A1S255, and that's what we need to enter here. So alright, and the rest of it stays the same. You can see where there's a lot going on here on the G code to print it and everything. And that's it. When I exit out of this, it will save it, and that will come on every time. And there's a lot going on with the G codes, and it's kind of I recommend looking it up so you know the basics about what it's doing, because you can really go in here and fine-tune what you want done. But that being said, and let's make sure everything stayed, I'm going to click over to it again. Yep, there's the G code. There we go. That's what we just added in. Okay, so that is it. So now I can go in here and yep, the P1S 0.4 nozzle engineering plate. So I'm going to go in here and do a test print and see how well it does. And don't forget, all this is set. Let's go to the printer. So here we see I still had it set up. When it was a P1P, I was running PETG through it. So don't forget, you're gonna have to go through and do your filament calibration now. So and I'll be switching back over, I'll be switching to, oh, there it is. I was just overlooking it. Generic ASA black, and I'll just set that for now, because just don't forget you have to go in there and set your K factor and go through all the manual calibration now. So other than that, that's it. Once that's done, you're ready to print. Well, all right, as you can see, it's back here getting ready to do the flow calibration, and it is manual on the P1S. There it goes. It took forever for the bed to warm up. Yeah, it takes a little longer for this bed to warm up than the X1 Carbon, but I can talk about that on a different video. But in this case, the conversion is done. Everything seems to be working fantastic. I'm about to print off a test print using ASA. Now, I don't have the ventilation system on this one. I did hook one up on the X1 Carbon, but in the future I'm going to have these side by side, and I'll have the ventilation and ducting system, so that, because I do print a lot with ASA, but and I put an engineering plate on it. This was what it came with, the PEI dual-sided, but for what I'm doing, I really like that engineering or a high temp plate. So, but that's it. So it's going to start calibrating here, and then I'll run a test print. But everything turned out pretty well. I just hope if you watched this before you did your installation, hopefully this will save you a little time. You can see what I went through and the steps I took. It took me a lot longer than it should have, when, you know, it should have taken me 1.5 hours to 2 hours. But since I was filming, you know, with the stuff in the way, it could have been 2.5 to 3, but it ended up taking me 4 to 4.5, because I kept having to take that back plate off and on again. But if you do it in the right order, it'll save you a lot of time. But, well, I guess that's it. I'm going to tend to my P1S here, and that's it for this video. So thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and watch for my next video, and happy printing.